Hello, my name is Angela, and today we are going to be doing a presentation on business etiquette in restaurants. First, I wanted to touch off that in any career or charitable setting that you are going to run into carrying a meeting over a meal, and I just want to touch base on some of the things that you might run into. I never put much thought into this until about a year ago when I started volunteering for the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer Charitable Foundation. Every Tuesday we hold our meeting, and it is at a place that does Taco Tuesday. So I wouldn't eat all day, and I'd like be thinking to myself, "Oh, it's Taco Tuesday! Like, thank goodness! Like, I'm just gonna like devour these tacos." And I'd get there, and I like wouldn't have my agenda ready. I wouldn't have anything planned. I was just like so consumed about what tacos I was gonna get. I was not even paying attention to like what we were doing in the meeting, which is a couple things we're gonna go over, which you totally want to avoid. Now that we are all thinking about tacos, I hope to stress in this presentation the need for business etiquette in a restaurant. I will touch on what to order, should you get a beer, is paying necessary, and why is there so much silverware. All right, the first thing I want to go over is don't be so hungry that all you can think about is tacos, like myself. So eat something a little bit ahead of time. Like, don't starve yourself all day just to get to this business meeting and be so consumed by the idea of food that you can't even focus on what's going on or what people's names are. And the second thing I want to go over is dress appropriately. You know, the meetings that I have with the breast cancer committee are very casual. It's jeans, a nice shirt, something like that. Depending on what you're meeting and what you're meeting about, you know, I had a mortgage meeting when I was buying my house, so that was a little bit more fancy. So we kind of had to dress appropriately for that. And depending on what kind of job situation you get in the future, it might be big contracts you're trying to sell to people. So this first impression over a meal could mean a lot for you. And the next thing, you would think it's obvious, but turn off your phone. Nobody wants to hear that thing buzzing, and it is the most rudest thing on this planet to reach down and check your phone while you're at dinner, especially when you're like trying to have a conversation with somebody and they're just, huh? Oh, I'm sorry. It's like, okay, no, don't do that. Right. And the next thing is be on time. Be punctual. Be 5 to 10 minutes early. If you get there and you're waiting by the host stand and your host is not there yet, just go back to your car for a minute, regroup yourself, go to the bathroom, do something. You want to almost seem like you arrive at the same time. It's almost. The next thing is shake hands with everybody you meet. Even if you're just having a meeting with your host, introduce yourself. Be like, hey, it's really nice to finally have a meal with you. If you are meeting other people, do the etiquette that we've learned in this class about shaking hands. You know, make good eye contact. Be like, hey, Angela, it's really nice to meet you. Oh, David, it's great to meet you, and go from there. And then once you've been introduced to everybody and you go to your table, wait until your host sits down first. He might gesture to a chair and be like, oh, like, why don't you sit right here next to me? Or like, why don't you and David sit next to each other and like get to know each other? You'll be working together a lot. And you can kind of gauge, but just wait until they sit down first and then you can be seated. And the second you sit down, most tables will have like a nice linen or a nice napkin. Just immediately put it over your lap. You don't have to completely unfold the thing to cover your lap. You could just put it on one knee. You could put it on the other. Put it on both, but just don't like tuck it into your shirt. You're not at Joe's Crab Shack. I mean, if you are, that would be awkward. But don't tuck it into your skirt. Don't tuck it anywhere. Just like put it on your lap. And if you do have to get up and go to the bathroom, you see a lot of people picking it up and putting it on their plate. If you pick it up and put it on the back of your chair, the waitress will know that you're coming back and it's not this big napkin that they have to like pick up if they do bring your food while you're gone. The next thing you want to do is familiarize yourself with your place settings. More than likely, if it is a very fine dining restaurant, you're going to have multiple forks, multiple spoons, a couple knives, like 14 glasses, just like stuff everywhere. So just remember that the food is going to be on the left and your drinks and soup is going to be on your right. So all the soup is going to come in from the waitress on your right side, and everything else, your meal and your appetizer, is going to come in from your left side. So your bread plate and everything like that, you want to work your way outside in. So if they do bread, you have a bread plate with a little bread knife. And if you do go to get bread from your host, don't be the person that's reaching and be like, oh, I just want another bite. Just like tear off a big piece and then break that into pieces on your plate. And the same thing goes if there's butter, olive oil, or some kind of like garlic based. You don't want to be reaching every time and just like dipping your nugget of bread into like everybody else's community butter or anything like that. So just like get the knife, put a scooping on there of what you think you'll need, and kind of like keep to yourself almost. You don't want to be like reaching and constantly be like, oh, give me the bread. You know, you just want to like keep to yourself a little bit. All right, and the next thing that we want to go over is alcohol. If it's like a brunch or anything like that, you may not want to order any kind of alcohol. More than likely, your host won't either. But if you're in a fine dining setting, most of the time they'll order a bottle of wine for the table. And usually, when the waiter will deliver you the bottle of wine, they give it to the host first. They'll taste it and they'll be like, yep, it's really good. And then you can offer your glass. The waiter is not going to fill the wine glass all the way to the brim. That's just not what they do. They give you maybe half an inch to an inch of wine in the bottom. And you can just taste it and sip on it throughout the meal. You're not obligated to drink more. It's more or less of something to try. So don't feel like you're obligated. But if the host orders a bottle of wine, don't be like, oh, like I'd rather a beer. It's more or less for the table to share. But if your host gets like a gin and tonic and they're raving about it and they're like, oh, you absolutely have to try it, then be like, yeah, of course, like I'll try it. If your host is not drinking any kind of alcohol, instead of just drinking water, you could get an iced tea or a seltzer water or a seltzer with lemon or a tonic water. Something like that that just shows your palate's a little more sophisticated than water and that you do like alcohol, but you're choosing not to drink it. And next, take note of what your host orders. If he orders an oyster platter or a cheese platter for an appetizer, you might want to do the same. Usually those are shareable, but you can just kind of gauge it on that. And then see what he recommends on the menu. Ask him if he's ever been there before. Oh, have you tried this? Is it really good? And he might be like, oh, the smoked tenderloin is absolutely amazing. You have to get it. You have to get it. So that can kind of gauge that he's like, okay, it's okay to get like a red meat base. Or if he's like, oh, the kale salad's absolutely delicious. So you can be like, okay, like he's a salad person. Like maybe I should get a salad. And then the next thing is be ready to place your order. When that waiter comes around, you want to be ready. Don't do any substitutes. Don't be like, oh, I really would prefer not to have any mushrooms. Well, it comes with mushrooms, so don't get something with mushrooms. You don't want to be picky or seem like you're doing too much. It's fine if you want to ask simple questions or like, are the mushrooms locally found? Did you buy them from a local source? And they could be like, oh yeah, we do. We get them from here locally. It's like, oh great, I would love to have that. Questions like that, it's totally fine. But if you want to be like nitpicky and stuff like that, you might want to just stay away from that item unless you're 100% sure that that's something that you would like. The next thing is don't order the most expensive item on the menu. I know the surf and turf looks great. That's totally different meal for a totally different time. And you can also gauge on what your host is getting. Like I said before, if they're like, oh, try the tenderloin, it's amazing, you can get the tenderloin. If they get something small and they're like, oh, I think I'm just getting a small salad today, you might want to do the same. You may want to just like gauge what you're getting off of them. And whatever you do get, don't get trouble foods. Don't get soup or burgers or handhelds or chicken tenders. Just don't do anything that you would have to use your hands. Trouble foods could be like spaghetti, any kind of bone-in, you think of like a chicken wing, that is obviously a very messy food. Any tough food, soup, pasta, anything like that that would cause excessive amounts of use of your hands in order to consume it is probably a trouble food, and I would definitely stay away from it at a business meeting. Wait until the host starts eating for you to start eating. And when you do start eating, you want to cut your food one piece at a time. It's very hard to make a big piece of food and put it in your mouth and continue having a conversation. If you just take little bites and little chews, you can carry on a conversation better than being like, oh, sorry, hold on, let me just finish chewing. It just carries the flow of the conversation of the business meeting a little bit better. Once the meal is over and you do get the check, you always want to make the move to pay, even though you're not expected to. The host invited you there. It's their obligation to pay for the meal. You could offer and be like, oh, like, let me get the tip. They'll be like, no, that's fine. Don't continue. If they say no once, just take their word for it and just, thank them for the meal. And thank them for inviting you and for meeting all those other people if they did bring other people along. In conclusion, I can only hope that you guys took something away from this presentation. Thinking about these scenarios and situations seem very far away and very distant, but just like I learned in my taco incident, they're very close, and sometimes it would be better prepared now than in the future waiting for something like this to happen. So in the future, I really hope that you guys do have a restaurant business meeting and that you think of me and my presentation and just the etiquette that goes around it. Thank you. Oh, this is filming. Okay. I almost just cried. Of what your horse appetizer. I just said your horse, I said it again. And then take note of what your I did it again! Oh my God.